You think you are a good person. You recycle. You are polite. You have never stolen anything. But virtue is not a list of things you did not do. It is what you are when no one is watching and nothing is easy. Welcome to the Stoic Compass. I am EPICTETUS, and today I am joined by Carl Jung and LAOZI. Today we are examining what does it really mean to be a virtuous person, and why is it more demanding than we think? Let us start with what virtue is not. It is not reputation. It is not habit when habit is comfortable. It is not the kindness you show when kindness costs you nothing. Virtue is what remains when everything that makes goodness easy has been stripped away. When you are tired, afraid, humiliated, overlooked, what do you do then? That is the only test that counts. Everything else is rehearsal. The Stoics did not call virtue the highest good because it felt noble. They called it the highest good because it is the only thing that cannot be taken from you, and also the only thing that demands everything.
I do not disagree that virtue is demanding, but I think you are describing only half of the demand. You are talking about what a person does. I am more interested in what a person refuses to see. The shadow, what we suppress, what we disown, what we project onto others. That is where virtue actually breaks down. A man can discipline his behavior to a remarkable degree and still be causing harm he is entirely blind to. The most dangerous person in any room is not the one who acts badly. It is the one who is absolutely certain they are acting well.
You're both describing something real, but you are already arguing about which difficulty is harder. The question is simpler than that. Virtue is not a performance, and it is not an excavation project. It is a question of whether you are aligned with what is actually here, or whether you are pushing against it. Most people are not failing to be virtuous because they lack discipline or self-knowledge. They are failing because they are trying too hard to be a certain kind of person, and that trying is itself the obstacle.
Trying too hard. That is a remarkable thing to say to someone who has never tried hard enough. Most people I have met are not straining under the weight of excessive virtue. They are coasting. They're telling themselves a story about who they are that has very little to do with what they actually do on a Tuesday afternoon when no one is watching. The problem is not effort. The problem is that people confuse comfort with goodness.
Epictetus, you are making an argument for willpower. And willpower, I assure you, has limits that the will itself cannot see. I have sat with people who tried, genuinely, exhaustingly tried, to be good, and in their trying they were cruel to their children, dismissive of their partners, subtly contemptuous of anyone who did not share their standards. The shadow does not disappear because you discipline the surface. It finds another door. Virtue that has not faced what it is afraid of in itself is not virtue. It is a well-maintained facade.
Jung is pointing at something, but I want to say it differently. You cannot find what you are hiding from yourself by going looking for it. That search becomes its own kind of forcing. What I notice is that the people who are genuinely virtuous, not performing virtue, not enforcing it, are not thinking about virtue at all. They are simply responding to what is in front of them. The demand comes from treating virtue as a destination rather than a way of moving.
I understand the appeal of that, I do. But it is also the most convenient possible philosophy for someone who does not want to do the work. If you say virtue is effortless, then every person who is not yet virtuous can tell themselves they just need to relax into it. That is not wisdom. That is permission to stay where you are. Virtue requires decision. Specific, repeated, costly decision. You decide to tell the truth when the lie is easier. You decide to stay when leaving is safer. You decide to act when acting exposes you to judgment. None of that is effortless.
I want to come back to something Epictetus said, that virtue is what remains when everything easy has been stripped away. I actually agree with that framing, but I think the stripping away includes the stripping away of the self-image. The virtuous act is not only one that costs you comfort, it is one that costs you the story you have been telling yourself about who you are. That is the demand that most people never encounter because they stop before they get to it. They discipline their behavior, they do the visible work, and then they rest in the belief that they are good. They never ask what part of them is still operating in the dark.
There is no disagreement between us about the fact that virtue is difficult. The disagreement is about what makes it difficult. Epictetus says it is difficult because it requires constant decision and effort. Jung says it is difficult because the self deceives itself. I am suggesting it is difficult for a different reason entirely. It is difficult because we keep insisting that virtue is something we possess or achieve. That insistence is the problem. Virtue is not a state you arrive at. It is a kind of attention, and attention cannot be forced.
Attention cannot be forced, but it can be trained. That is the entire point of practice. That is why Stoics examine their day every evening, not to feel good about themselves, but to catch the exact moment where they lost the thread. You do not stumble into clear-eyed attention. You build it choice by choice for years. LAOZI, I respect your tradition, but I have been a slave. I have watched people in impossible circumstances decide, in those exact circumstances, who they were going to be. That was not effortless. That was the most effortful thing a human being can do.
That is a genuinely important point, and I want to honor it. But Epictetus, the slave who endures with dignity, is one kind of virtue. The master who owns slaves and believes himself a good man is another kind of case entirely. That man may be working extraordinarily hard at his own goodness and seeing none of the structure he's upholding. The shadow is not always inside the individual. Sometimes it is inside the whole culture, and the virtuous person cannot see it because everyone around them confirms the blind spot. That is when virtue requires something beyond willpower and self-examination. It requires the willingness to be wrong about something you have staked your identity on.
That is the sharpest thing either of you has said. The willingness to be wrong about something you have staked your identity on. That is close to what I mean by non-forcing, not passivity, not relaxing into comfort. It is something harder than effort. It is releasing the grip on who you have decided you are. That grip is what makes virtue so demanding. Not because goodness itself is complicated, but because people are holding something so tightly that no light can get in.
I will grant you this. The grip is real, and it is one of the great failures of the person who believes they have already arrived. But I want to be precise about something. You cannot release the grip on your self-image before you have built a self worth examining. There is a sequence here. First, you decide who you want to be. Then you practice being that. Then, only then, you are ready to see where you have been wrong about yourself. Skipping to the end and calling it wisdom is just another way of avoiding the work.
The sequence you describe, build, practice, examine, is useful, but it assumes the person knows what they are building toward, and most people do not. Most people inherit a self. They inherit their parents' definition of goodness, their culture's definition of virtue, their religion's checklist. The demand of real virtue is not just to practice the ideal you have been given. It is to ask whether the ideal itself is yours, or whether it is something you swallowed whole because it was never safe to question it. That questioning is not comfortable. It does not look like discipline from the outside. But without it, what you are practicing may not be virtue at all.
The stream does not decide which way to flow. It finds the way that is already open. You are both still talking about virtue as something a person constructs. I am wondering if it is something that happens when all the construction stops. Not laziness, not surrender, but the kind of stillness in which you can actually see what is needed, and you do it without the whole machinery of self-assessment running in the background.
That machinery, as you call it, is what keeps a person honest with themselves. Remove it and you get comfort, not clarity.
Perhaps the machinery is necessary, but not sufficient. It can run and produce increasingly refined self-justification. I have seen it.
You are both right about what goes wrong. You disagree about the cure. That disagreement may be the most honest thing we have said.
Say more about that.
Epictetus is curing weakness, Jung is curing blindness. Both diagnoses are real, but neither of you is asking what would make the cure unnecessary. What kind of person does not need to overcome their weakness or excavate their shadow every morning? Not because they have finished the work, but because they have stopped building the wall that makes the work necessary.
That is a beautiful ideal, but I have never met that person. Every person I have sat with, every person who ever genuinely tried to understand themselves, found the wall inside. The question is not how to prevent the wall. It is what you do when you find it.
Agreed. And what you do when you find it is not admire it. You decide what to do next. You act on what you now see. That is the Stoic answer. Knowledge without action is noise. All of this, the discipline, the shadow, the grip, the wall, and we have not yet said the thing that is most true. You have heard the argument. Now here's something simpler.
Most people think virtue is about doing the right thing, and it is, but only at the surface. The deeper demand of virtue is this: you have to be willing to be wrong about yourself, and not just once, repeatedly, in ways that cost you. Here's what that means in practice. You have a picture of who you are, a good friend, an honest person, someone who treats people fairly. That picture is real. It is not a lie, but it is incomplete. There is a part of you that you have never looked at directly because looking at it would require you to revise the picture. And revising the picture feels like losing something. That is the demand. Not discipline, though discipline matters. Not self-examination, though that matters too. The demand is the willingness to discover that a piece of your goodness has been performing goodness. and to sit with that discovery without immediately explaining it away. This is what makes virtue more demanding than most people expect. It is not hard because other people make it hard. It is hard because you make it hard by holding on to the version of yourself that cannot be wrong. Today, try this. Think of one person in your life toward whom you feel persistently justified. Someone whose behavior you have a settled, certain explanation for. Now ask honestly, what would I have to give up about my own self-image if I were wrong about them? Do not answer quickly, just let the question sit. That small discomfort you feel is exactly where the real work begins.
The virtuous person is not the one who has never failed. They are the one who has looked clearly at their failure and did not flinch away from what they saw. That is the work. Not once, not when it is convenient. Every time the opportunity appears, which is every day, you will not finish this. That is not the point. The point is that you keep looking. Walk out of here knowing one thing. The moment you are most certain you are a good person is the moment that certainty deserves the most scrutiny. If today's conversation has served you, take it further. Pay Attention by C. Tribu, 12 Lessons in the Practice of Seeing Clearly. Available now on Amazon.